Hello, so today's video is going to be my review for the Kat Von D Metal Matte, right? Metal Matte, yeah. So if you guys aren't familiar, I'm doing a 1 palette a week series where I take 1 palette and I use it for 5 straight looks, how the eyeshadows perform, how they work with each other, so to come up with my own opinion on what I think about the palette. So let's just get into the palette. First of all, this is gigantic. It is massive. This is the Modern Renaissance palette. It's huge. So that was definitely the first thing that I noticed when I got this palette. First of all, I just want to say shout out to Sephora. I ordered this and literally got it on my doorstep in less than 24 hours after I paid for like 2 to 4 day shipping. Like I selected cheap shipping and it literally came in less than 24 hours, and then when I checked the website, it said that it didn't even ship until like 3 days after I got it. Kind of like a miracle how quickly this got to me. It was weird. So yeah, let's talk about the packaging. Obviously the packaging is on point. It is so cool. I love this. I think that this is like one of the most innovative packaging things that I've seen. So it's stunning. It's really, really beautiful. I like having it out. My only issue is that it is gigantic, like it's fucking massive, so it's not exactly an easy palette to travel with. You do kind of have to have the vanity space to put this, which I don't. Yeah, it doesn't even fit in my IKEA drawer, like sideways. So you do have this nice big mirror here, which is fantastic, good quality mirror. And then the eyeshadows are right here. So in the palette, you do have your 9 metallics and 13 mattes. Now, this shit was not inexpensive. It's $74 Canadian, which is, in my opinion, fucking expensive. That's a really expensive palette. It's $2 more than what I paid for the Mi Vida Loca palette last season, which I'll have to almost do a whole review on that because that one was just... Now, you do have 22 eyeshadows in there, so that does equal out to, I think it's something like $3.30 an eyeshadow, which is a really good price per eyeshadow for this palette. Now, I'm gonna go into my cons for this palette because you guys saw me use it for a week. You may have heard me mention in a couple videos things that I don't like about this. So I'm going to go into the things that I don't like first, and then I'm going to talk about the things that I do like, just because I like ending a video on a positive note. So I have a couple things I don't like about this palette. Number one is it doesn't visually make sense to me, which is kind of a stupid thing to be a complaint, but it really irritates me how this eyeshadow isn't placed next to these purples. That just doesn't make sense to me. It pisses me off that this one is over there. I don't know why. Another thing that you guys heard me mention in a previous video is that there is no need to have a white in this palette as well as bone. They literally look almost the same. So they're so close in shade that once you put them on the lid, they don't really look too much different. So I really think that putting a white in this palette was a poor choice. It just makes no sense. I just don't understand the point of this. The other thing that irritates me is this yellow shade here. This is another one where it's a weird color for one, and it doesn't go with anything else in the palette, I don't think. I tried to make it work and it's just kind of an irritating color, like why is this in here? I really could have done without the white and the yellow in this palette, and when you have that many eyeshadows, you know, putting a warm orange in here would have been great. Putting a, I don't know, kind of like a reddish brown maybe would have been fantastic. My next complaint is the quality of some of the mattes. Now, the purple shades don't perform that well. These two are not, in my opinion, very good eyeshadows. I don't find that they blend as evenly and they're not as pigmented as the other ones in the palette, and some of them are really good. Like Velvet is amazing, but then these purples are just not that good. And when you're paying that much money for a palette, you do expect like some sort of quality, and I feel like out of all the Kat Von D shadows that I do own, that those are the two like worst performing ones that I even have. So that's kind of a piss off for me. There are the purple shades in the metals, which are beautiful, but then I feel like I do have to pull better performing purple eyeshadows in order to get really beautiful looks using those. Another thing that I find sort of weird as well is that you have this dark gray, green, slate kind of color, and then you have a black. These are also so similar when blended out on the lid that I don't feel like you needed both of those either. Okay, so that was kind of my cons about the mattes. Now the pros about the mattes is all the other ones that I didn't mention are really well performing, and they also layer really well. That means that you can blend them out easily and you can go in lightly and you can build up color. So overall, the mattes in the palette are not my favorite, except for like, I love this green, I love Velvet. Oak is fantastic. That's like one of the best brown eyeshadows. I love this one. Suede is a great transition shade. you know, some of the other ones in here. But overall, I'm not really impressed with the mattes in this palette. Okay, so moving on to the metals in the palette, I really feel like the metals are the best performing eyeshadows in this palette. They are like amazing. They're so, let me do this one here. Boop, boop, boop. They are so emollient. They feel almost like Makeup Forever eyeshadows in that they have almost like a gel-like consistency. They're really beautiful and they perform wonderfully. So definitely this palette is worth it to me just for the metallics. Now, here's my other issue with this palette is that the metallics and the mattes don't blend. They just don't. They don't blend very well together. I did sort of like a metallic on the crease and then trying to blend it out with a matte. Doesn't work. Matte will attach to the lid and then the metallic kind of just stays there. It doesn't really move once it's applied, which is a good thing. They don't move around, but at the same time you want to have a little bit of wiggle room so that you're able to blend them out, which I find you really can't do with these. So I feel like you have to use one of these shades in the crease and then you're stuck using one of these on the lid. So I feel like that really kind of limits how you can use these metallics because they don't really blend with the mattes very well. That's just my opinion. So I feel like you really can only get, you know, matte in the crease, metallic on the lid, matte in the crease, metallic on the lid, which doesn't really allow for a lot of like unique different combinations. I think a smarter idea would have been for Kat to release something very similar to, I would say the Urban Decay, let me pull it open here, to the Urban Decay Moon Dust palette, where she would have taken only the metallic shades and put, say, I don't know, 10 or 12 of them in a palette and charge us $74 for that. That would have made sense and I would have purchased something like that. But to be honest, the mattes, I could almost do without the mattes in this palette and just have the metallics. So it's really a question for you guys if you are willing to pay $74 for 9 really well performing metal eyeshadows. And that's really the tough question. Like, yeah, there are some really good mattes in here, but is it worth it when quite a few of them are duds and quite a few of them don't make sense in the palette? So that's kind of my pros and cons. So overall, I love the metallics. I think they're beautiful. They're very, very pigmented and gorgeous, but I'm really disappointed in the matte. For me, it really makes it a hard palette to recommend. If you have the money to spend on it and you really think you're going to get a lot of use out of those metallic shades, then I say go for it. But if you're kind of on the fence, I would see if you can swatch it in person just so you can get a feel for how the mattes are and look at it and see, okay, are these colors that I'm going to be using all the time? But it's almost better to wait to go swatch it in store just to see if the mattes are something that you're willing to spend a little bit more time to work with. You know, unlike the mattes and the metallics in the Master Palette by Mario, I feel like this palette does require some effort. You really do have to work with them a little bit more. They're not as easy, if you will, to work with. That's kind of my pros and cons. It's the metallics are amazing, the mattes are except for a couple in there that are really good. So for $74 Canadian, a little bit less American, it's really a question of, do you personally think that it is worth it? And it was worth it for me. I'm going to keep this palette because I do like the metallics. I think they're beautiful. But I will be using outsider eyeshadows with this, which even with 22 eyeshadows, you really shouldn't have to do. That is my overall opinion. I do hope you guys enjoy this review. Let me know down in the comments anything you want. Do you have this palette? Do you like it? Do you agree, disagree on the things that I said? Will you be picking it up? Do you think it's worth it? Anything. Leave anything in the comments. I love seeing things. Also, definitely feel free to answer anyone else's questions that you think that you might have something insightful to say. I love it when I can see you guys sort of interacting like that. I think that's awesome. But yeah, hopefully you guys are doing good. And next week will be Venus 2 week, where I'm going to be using the Lime Crying Venus 2 palette for 5 days. So stay tuned for that. And yeah, hopefully you guys like this video. And until my next one, I'll talk to you soon.